Console, online. HPG connection, online. Educational module, online. All systems, nominal.
Hello, class, and welcome to On the Origin of Battlemechs Podcast, episode 22. Today we are going to talk about the Wolverine, and I am your host, Brent Stewart McKee. My co-hosts today are...
I'm Joshua.
And I'm Chandler.
So today we're going to talk about the Wolverine, and next episode we're going to talk about the Wolverine because we're going to split it in order to keep the number of models we talk about manageable, because we're also going to finally bite that bullet and talk about the unseen. So prepare to strap in for that one. But until we get there, we have the Wolverine itself to talk about. With the Mackey's Davian line being fully operational, and the Battle Axe as the Federated Sun's first homegrown mech, the AFFS was in need of a mobile cavalry mech to fill out their armed forces. The R&D teams took inspiration, cribbed notes, or just copied design elements of the Griffin and the Shadowhawk, and the bidding was competitive for the contract to build the Wolverine, but in the end the contract was awarded to Norse Battlemech Works on Marduk. This windfall for Norse Battlemech Works is attributed by historians to the co-op program they built on the planet to help support their infrastructure, and also from some heavy political pressure from first Prince Ellen Davian to spurn and put in their place Prince Varnes of House Varnes, as they were a heavy investor in the rival company. The Wolverine focused on maneuverability and then a balanced loadout and heat management. Ironically, the Griffin and Shadowhawk would return the favor of stealing notes from them and steal notes from the Wolverine to improve their own designs, which explains why both of them now are 55 tons, as we talked about. So, there was that missing puzzle piece. The Wolverine would become a normal sight in the AFFS. And the interesting thing is, I actually hadn't really ever dug into the history of the Wolverine before, and I had always assumed it was part of a, trifecta from the Terran government of the Griffin, the Wolverine, and the Shadowhawk, because they're so similar.
Hey, you can just chalk that up to some nice Terran hegemony Star League propaganda.
It's true, although they're not around to keep it up nowadays.
True.
So it has the design quirks of being a command mech, extended torso twist, improved communications, Jettison-capable weapon AC-5, protected actuators, ubiquitous, and cramped cockpit.
And then it's also not just ubiquitous to the inner sphere, it's also ubiquitous to the clans, which is interesting, it being a inner sphere mech.
Yes.
And having the name Wolverine.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a deep dive for another day. So the first model we have is the WVR-1R. First seen in 2471, the prototype actually had two possible weapon loadouts during the R&D. The AC-5 and the medium laser would ultimately be settled on after the other option, swapping the AC for a PPC and additional heat sinks. The subcontractors that were to build the PPCs were unable to not only deliver them on time, but the quality was substandard, causing the electromagnetic interference when the weapon was used. As such, the AC-5 was chosen as the loadout. The developers decided to settle on the underwhelming firepower, instead redesigning the R1 last minute to utilize the remaining tonnage to add armor and additional protection at the joints. This had the result of the R1 being a stable and reliably cool running mech that would have sustainability on the battlefield.
Well, I have to kind of disagree with the underwhelming firepower thing. If we think of the AC-5 as the main battle tank weapon that we see it is when battlemechs begin development.
Mm-hmm. It is absolutely comparable to other tanks on the battlefield.
Yeah, and to me this guy is the epitome of, the M4 Sherman or T-34 or Panzer IV. Just that perfectly balanced medium tank that can both support infantry and deal with enemy armor.
And it's got a jump capability. No tank's going to have that.
Oh,
correct.
Well, not for a while anyway.
Yeah. And how do you quantify hover tanks?
Well, there's hover tanks that jump.
It's true. So it has a battle value of 885 and a point value of 23. It has a medium laser in the head, and it has a AC-5 in the right arm. It has a movement profile of 464 and 10 single heat sinks. And of course, it's got primitive technology as it is of the primitive era. And it's got a decent loadout. It has a whole bunch of ammo. It's well protected. Those are not bad things. The 40 shots for your AC-5 you're probably not going to need on the tabletop because, as we've discussed before, the engagements generally don't last that long.
It only has 5.5 less tons of primitive armor than the Mackey itself.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's a beefy boy for medium.
For being your support mech, it's almost edging into the Mackey's territory a little bit.
Just without the firepower.
Yeah.
Yeah. So an interesting note is, ironically, Prince Varnies would be the first to receive the first 4 production grade R1s, and he would pilot the very first for the remainder of his life, and it would be passed down into the family, and the machine would later become known as the Varnies-1R. It served in the house until they were defeated in the Davian Civil War, where we believe it was taken as part of payment for protecting the remainder of the family by the Capellans when they exiled into the Capellan Confederation.
Well, sometimes you just got to give away some family heirlooms to make sure people survive.
It's true. It's how they get in museums, after all, right?
Yeah. We didn't steal it. It was payment.
Yep.
And this 1R lacks the characteristic 6-pack missile launcher that the following variants almost universally have.
It's true.
I think you could probably chalk that up to it being a early design, and they're still trying to figure out exactly what they want to do with it.
Do we know what year SRM-6s were first developed? Because as we saw with the crossbow, they tended to go into more modular launchers or smaller groupings because they were easier to produce. So maybe the SRM-6 was produced between the 2 models.
2370, according to Sarna.
That theory holds no water.
It's a possible that the Federated Suns just didn't have a reliable source of SRM, non-primitive SRM-6.
Also true.
The 1R is followed by the 3R, and the biggest change is dropping some ammunition and some armor to add that 6 rack to the shoulder, which there's not much to say about it other than you lose 3 tons of armor and 1 ton of AC ammo for a SRM-6 and 1 ton of ammo. Still primitive.
Yep, this guy is still primitive, and, most of the armor is stripped off of the legs and arms, so you don't really lose any defense in the torso, which is a good thing to note. Still got the same movement profile and same amount of heat sinks, but, the little extra punch of those SRMs is not a bad thing to see, especially since it, you want to have more than one explosive weapons platform, especially if you're dealing with things at multiple ranges. As we've discussed, infantry is a lot easier to get out of a building with SRMs than it is a medium laser.
Yep, and that AC5 has a minimum range in classic Battletech.
Yep.
So that 6-pack helps cover that gap.
I definitely think the 3R is a solid design, and it's just kind of held back by the tech that it has to deal with at its time. But, the next mech definitely shows that gets smoothed over real quick.
Well, this design wouldn't be as prolific as it is if it wasn't good.
Yeah.
At least in its very core. There is always something in every model that's like, yeah, even for its time, it's got something.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's just, it's still held back a bit by that primitive tech, and then that gets solved later on.
So the 3R was first seen in 2490, and it's got a battle value of 867 and a point value of 24.
And then we get to the quote-unquote original Wolverine, the 6R, the infamously unseen classic Wolverine in 2575.
Yeah, definitely upgrades the tech level, ditches all the primitive tech for standard technology.
Yeah, so this guy was actually produced by Kalon Industries. They purchased the rights to produce it from Northwind Metalworks the same year as it was produced, 2575. This model was produced for the newly formed SLDF and would see much action during the Reunification Wars. After the Reunification Wars, it was approved for sales to the house units, so that's why we'll see it pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, and the really cool thing about this one is ditching all that primitive tech basically allowed them to keep all the weapon systems from the 3R, but bump the movement profile up to 585, so over 80 kilometers an hour and jumping over 150 meters. But the armor bumps back up to almost what it was in terms of points on the 1R. And then, like I said, you keep the AC5 medium laser and SRM6 of the 3R. So this is really the best of the 2 primitives with a little extra speed added on top.
And 2 extra heat sinks.
Yeah.
With the addition of the 5 jump it does need. So it's good that it has it.
Yeah.
It can still go a little hot if it jumps fully and it fires everything. But, that's 1 heat. That's nothing to, be scared about.
That's a slow burn over time. You can manage that. Yeah. So, like we said, it has the same loadout, medium laser in the head, SRM in the left torso, AC5 in the right arm. It's got a battle value of 1101 and a point value of 30.
I'm going to say, in this original unseen artwork, I believe it was from Dogram, it's carrying a briefcase, and its medium laser is actually a little double-barreled turret on the front, and the original
and it's
3020
nested like right below the cockpit.
Yes. And the original 3025 TRO says that little ball turret was supposed to rotate 360 degrees. So it's basically supposed to be a Battlemech turret, but SRM launcher on the shoulder got in the way once they added that.
Dang SRMs.
So next up we have the 6K, which came out in 2598, and this unit removes the temperamental Northrop 12,000 jump jets and replaces it with more armor and added weapons. It also takes out the AC5 to replace with a large laser, a medium laser, and a small laser, all in the right arm. Still got the SRM-6 in the left torso and the medium laser in the head. It's got a movement profile of 5'8", and it has 14 heat sinks.
Fun fact about this one, TRO 3025 has a misprint for the Wolverine K and calls it the Wolverine A.
Really?
Good to know. Also to note, it does take the AC5 MO, and instead of stripping it for weight, it does replace it with SRM6 MO. So you end up with twice as many SRM6 shots, which is good for a mech with an all laser layout, because then it gives you some explosive firepower.
Yeah. How's the heat on this guy, though?
He's
Not
a
great.
toasty boy.
There is a trade-off.
19. He runs 7 over if he runs in alphas. Yeah, so he's a warm boy.
Yes.
But then again, the small laser isn't going to be used all the time. And you can always alternate off your medium lasers.
Just take some pilot discretion.
Yeah, and it looks like if you run, you can fire that large laser and SRM and be heat neutral. So, I mean, it's a nice diverse weapons spread. Gives the pilot a lot of options.
It was a little too bad to lose the 3 hexes on the large laser from the AC5, but those are some trade-offs you have to make sometimes, especially since you get more damage out of it.
And you have no minimum range on it, so you can fire it and your SRMs.
Yep. So it's got a battle value of 1248 and a point value of 35. It is, of course, followed by the 6M, which was produced in...
Well, hold up.
Oh.
No, we got a royal contender out on the scene now.
Oh.
The Wolverine 2, Wolverine 7H, produced by the Hegemony for their royal units.
See, I must have missed that one when I was pulling research material. Please do enlighten me.
The Wolverine 2, it trades out a lot of the standard technology for fancy royal technology. So the internals, instead of being standard internals, are bumped up to endosteel, and then the armor is bumped over the ferrofibrous. You do end up losing some net armor points, but you do have a lot less weight there, and they put that back into the weapons.
Well, actually, you lose armor over the 6K, which is an up-armored version. You actually gain armor over the standard 6R.
That's true. Didn't think about that. I was going off the 6K, so yeah, you gain a little bit of armor. Probably not for any weight.
9 points.
Yeah, you just gain armor, essentially, just for crits. Your autocannon's upgraded to an Ultra AC5, so you get a little bit more firepower out of that for the risk of jamming. You got your SRM6 in your left torso, and then you've got a medium pulse laser in the head, replacing the standard medium laser. So you got a little bit more firepower there.
And the SRM6 isn't just an SRM6. It's upgraded to have Artemis 4.
And that is true as well. And you get case, so you are not exploding. Well, you are, but... exploding slightly less.
Exploding in a general direction away from yourself.
And then they also upgrade the double heat sinks, which is not as useful on this design as would it be for the 6K, but it's the Royals, so they probably figured since they already had it open, might as well put in the cool tech, right?
Gotta show it off.
This Wolverine 7H is probably one of the best 2 Wolverine variants, in my humble opinion. And I run something very similar when I'm playing MechWarrior Online, mostly just trading out the medium pulse to a ER medium and the SRM6 to an MRM system, just to give a little more range cohesion with that ultra autocannon. But this is a great 55-ton mech.
The Royal versions usually are.
Yeah. The SLDF, even though they sometimes didn't have the best mech choices, did try to make the most out of what they had. Although that's a lot later. It tends to be with the weird mechs. Battle value is 1301.
Point value is 34.
Next up, we have the 6M, produced in 2816, and over time became the only model produced by Kalon Industries by their factory in Thermopolis after the planetside stockpile of the AC-5s was destroyed by a Lyran raid in the First Succession War. This model keeps the jump jets, and it quickly became a mainstay of the Free World League, what does the FWLM stand for again?
Free Worlds League Militia.
Right, yeah, just Free Worlds League Militia, right, not military. It quickly became a mainstay of the Free Worlds League Militia. So it's got a large laser in the right arm, a medium laser in the right arm, a SRM-6 in the left torso, and a medium laser in the head. It got a movement profile of 585, and it has 14 heat sinks.
Yeah, and it is Free Worlds League Military, not militia.
Free World League Military. No worries, it's okay.
But there is a unit that is the Free World League Militia, so not to make it confusing at all.
Acronyms in Battletech being confusing? No.
Alphabet soup, man. Alphabet soup.
So this guy's got a battle value of 1291 and a point value of 32.
Yeah, definitely warm with only 14 heat sinks and having that large laser and the additional medium.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you're jumping.
Yeah.
So after that, we have the 6D in 2834, and it is, of course, the Davian model, D for Davian. And it's just got a medium laser, but it upgrades the AC from a 5 to a 10. Still keeps that movement profile of a 585, and it's got 11 heat sinks. This guy's not going to be running too toasty, considering an alpha strike and a full jump is going to be 11 heat. Unless you run into a fire starter, you should be okay.
Yeah, do shed a little bit of armor to get that AC 10, but that's an AC 10, man. That's something that'll hurt if it hits.
Yeah.
The Davians do love their autocannons after all.
Yeah.
Yep. And if you're playing the HBS Battletech game, that thing becomes a head capper. A very mobile head capper.
I can't remember what model is in that game, but I just remember when the AI is piloting it, it just turns into a damage sponge.
I think the 6R is in it, and maybe the 6D as well. I can't remember.
I mean, you could create a 6D from a 6R pretty easily, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
I think there's a laser one and a autocannon one of whatever flavor they decided on.
Especially with the mechanics of their mech construction in-game.
Those of you who are listening, if you haven't played HBS Battletech, I highly recommend it. It is a fun game. And I'm not being paid to say this.
Yes, we are not sponsored, but if we want to sponsor us, we'd probably say no, but we'd appreciate it a lot, and it would be awesome to reach out and if you could plug us.
I'd say yes.
I have no idea what we could do for them.
So the 6D has a BV of 1115 and a point value of 25. And it's followed up by another Davian model, the 7D, in 3050. So this is clan invasion time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Just on the cusp of that, the very beginning. Mm-hmm. So this guy keeps the SRM-6s, but it upgrades the medium laser to a medium pulse laser, and it upgrades the AC-5 to an Ultra AC-5. Also has a mask.
Yes.
Myomer acceleration circuitry.
So it's got a movement profile of 585, and then when that is activated, we get a run of 10. It's also got 13 double heat sinks. So this guy is going to run nice and cool, no problem. In order to get all that tonnage for the weapon system and everything, we have a trade-off of having an XL fusion engine. So a little more vulnerable.
It's interesting. This guy basically mimics the 7H, that Wolverine 2, except he's got an XL and mask and doesn't use Artemis.
Yeah, and then it also doesn't have the endo steel to save that weight that the XL has to come in for.
It is the last Wolverine artwork to have the unseen art published.
Mm-hmm.
Although it moves the briefcase to the weapon arm, and that becomes the ammunition bin, which we then see on pretty much all subsequent art.
Yeah, so this guy was produced for the AFFS in the newly established Nanking facility, and it's got a battle value of 1314 and a point value of 34.
Yeah, and the reason they had to start manufacturing this at the Nanking facility, which they captured during the Fourth Succession War, was because they lost their Wolverine factory on Marduk to the Draconis Combine, the War of 3039.
Mm-hmm. But overall, they came out ahead because the facilities there are actually better than the ones they lost.
Yeah.
So, of course, Kurita, not wanting to be outdone, they have their own version addition ready for when the clans show up, the 7K. And this guy's got a 585 movement profile, a medium pulse laser in the head, a SRM-6 in the right torso, an SRM-6 in the left torso, a large pulse laser in the right arm, and a small pulse laser in the right arm. It's got 13 double heat sinks. It also has the XL, but I don't like the loss on range, but other than that, I think this thing is sweet.
Yeah, this guy becomes a nice little infighter.
Yeah, definitely feel it. It would feel very much at home in like a city or a very wooded area.
And I mean, with the movement profile it has and the weapons loadout it has, the heat sinks are going to be able to handle that quite easily unless you're jumping.
Yeah, and even if you do jump, you just don't fire either one of the SRMs or the medium pulse.
And you're golden.
Yeah.
And for Alpha Strike, and I want to make this note because there's not a lot of Intersphere medium mechs with a 4 points of damage in their short and medium range bracket. 7K is one of the few that do. So doesn't matter where you play, this 7K is a very solid Wolverine to be running.
It has a battle value of 1331 and a point value of 37. So you see that 3-point jump in the Alpha Strike points, and of course Alpha Strike has a different scale, so 3 points is a much bigger deal compared to classic Battletech, which only has a jump of 17.
Yeah, and the Free Worlds League not wanting to miss out on all of the new Wolverine goodness, looking across the cold depths of space and seeing Davian and Kurita playing, decided to get in.
Also, they wanted to export this bad boy with, the clans invading and the new coalition or armistice or whatever you want to call what Jamie Wolf negotiated.
Ain't no business like the war business.
It's true.
And they developed the 7M.
Which is like a Kurita model, but on steroids.
Yeah, it takes like the best out of the 7D and the 7K and gives it a little bit of a Merrick twist.
Yep, that's pretty much what we got.
I don't know, because to me a Merrick twist would be they gave it more missiles, but they doubled down on lasers.
I've always seen Merrick as large lasers.
Really?
That's their thing. I thought their fluff was that they couldn't get their mitts on PPCs, and so they just slapped like large lasers on everything that had a PPC. And so I've always associated laser with Merrick.
Well, I think we've found a subject for another data dive on another day. What weapon systems do we associate with everything and why?
Yeah.
Well, I was just saying it doubles down on the lasers with 2 ER large lasers.
Yeah. This one ain't messing around. 2 ER larges, both in the right arm. 1 SRM-6 in the left torso, as per tradition. And a medium pulse laser in the right torso. And a medium pulse laser in the head. And it's got a 1-ton SRM-6 ammo for that SRM-6. It does take notes from the 7D and does have the 5.8-10-5 movement profile. So it uses a mask system to get it up that high. But it does lose armor off of both the 7D and 7K with only 160 points, as opposed to the 7D's 179 and the 7K's 185.
It also loses a double heat sink, which hurts with those 2 ER large lasers.
Yes, that hurts a lot with the double ER larges. This thing is warm. It cannot fire everything and jump without having a bad time. But if you just don't fire one of the ER larges, you're in for a treat.
Yeah, I feel like this guy really wants the bracket fire position where the ER large lasers go offline when you get in close, because you rely on the hit modifier that you get from the medium pulses.
Yeah.
And at that point, you're also hoping you've ripped enough holes in the armor to where the SRM-6 and the pulses can find them juicy innards to blow up.
Whereas the Kurita 7 variant is a very much infighting mech. This guy's more of a sniper. He wants to stay at range, skirmish.
Yeah, that long range of 19 on the ER large lasers is real nice.
Yeah, he sits back and pokes around corners, sticks his arm out and slashes people up with his lasers, trying to avoid return damage, stay at the edge of the battlefield, and then when everybody's beaten up, he rolls in almost pristine and starts finishing people off with those 2 medium pulses and the SRM-6.
So it's got a battle value of 1673 and a point value of 34. So this is where we're going to take a break in the discussing the models, and we will pick up next episode. And we're also going to take a quick little break because we're about to go into the data dive for the unseen. So pour yourself a drink, whether it be a nice tea or something stronger, strap in, prepare yourself, sit in, whatever you need to do, because this is a long one.
What could go wrong?
right, so for the data dive this week, we have the Unseen, and it all really started in 1985 when Harmony Gold launched Robotech in North America. It combined 3 series: the Super Dimension Fortress Macross from 1982, Genesis Chamber Mos Breda, I am unfamiliar with the series, so I apologize if I mispronounce that, from 1983, and Super Dimension Cavalry Southern Cross from 1984. The IP in these series would form the core of the Unseen legal issues, but the IP from Crusader Joe and Fang of the Sun Dugram would also later be included in this category. Harmony Gold contacted FASA about the use of the Valkyrie, Destroid, Glag, and Regal designs that appear in Robotech and inquired as to the license standing and the chain of custody. That same year, they sent a cease and desist to FASA, but did not take any legal action. This resulted in FASA moving forward, unchanging their plans, as they were working under the assumption that the license they had obtained from TCI was valid and covered their operations. The chassis or designs in question from SDFM is the Wasp, Stinger, Valkyrie, Phoenix Hawk, Crusader, Rifleman, Archer, Warhammer, Longbow, Behemoth, Marauder, Oscout, Osol, and Ostrock. Crusader Joe has the Locust, and Fang of the Sun Dugram has Shadowhawk, Griffin, Scorpion, Wolverine, Thunderbolt, Goliath, and Battlemaster. Told you it was a big one, and we're not even started.
This is merely the layout.
Yes. In 1985, Harmony Gold also released the line of Robotech toys that coincided with the TV show release. That year, FASA released their first 2 expansions, Tales of the Black Widow and Fox's Teeth, and they used designs that depict the models in question. In 1986, FASA hired Dane Luce, who designed a number of unique non-humanoid mechs for Technical Readouts 3025. They were given 32 distinct designs with stats that Luce then illustrated, and while doing so made small adjustments to the designs to make more realistic. And the designs did have multiple drafts before being accepted, wanting the designs to have more personality. In 86, FASA also released 3 more illustrations based on the Regal series pod from SDFM. These inspired listings are the Ostrot, the Ostrock, and the Osol. They did have enough iterations that they would eventually be seen as original designs for legal purposes. These designs would initially be considered unseen, but in 2011, Catalyst Game Labs declared that the original depictions by Todd Marsh and the subsequent iterations of the design were legally permissible to reproduce, and no one has disputed the statement to this day at time of recording. What has helped was that Todd created 2 other wholly original designs, the Raven and the Cataphract, who appear in the House Liao sourcebook. In 1990, FASA would release Technical Readouts 3050 that would have updated drawings of the Unseen designs, but they had not yet been named as such because legal troubles were still on the horizon. So for FASA and Playmate Toys, at the very end of 1991, at the beginning of negotiations for a Battletech toy line started and continued up until 1993. Ultimately, what happened was the toy line project grew and a TV show was developed to promote the toy line, because after all, it was the late 80s, early 90s, but was abandoned in favor of the IP Exosuits by Playmate Toys, a harder line, air quote there, mech series, especially when you compare the TV shows, but I don't think if you compare the actual fiction of Battletech. The breaking point was when they pitched the concept to the Japanese market, and the concern was raised that they were too similar to already existing designs that existed. In fact, an unused prototype toy was made specifically to avoid these issues. Next, we come to FASA and Tyco Toys, and after the rejection from Playmates, FASA took the project to Tyco, who agreed, and they had a final contract in 1993. But when at a 1993 Toy Fair convention, a Tyco rep saw the exosuit display featuring a heavily modified Mad Cat design, Tyco abruptly terminated the contract. FASA, having lost the contract, now moved against Playmates on legal grounds for the IP infringement that they have now incurred. And it just doesn't get any simpler from this point here, people. And the design in questions are from exosuits, and I actually remember exosuits, so this is one of the things that's like, oh, my childhood. So the alleged infringement for the exosuit designs, the Phaeton was the clan elemental, the Shiva was the king crab, the Marshal was the Black Hawk, the Alec Delon was the Koshi and the Dayashi, the Lavinus was the Black Hawk and the Bushwhacker, the Maggie was the Dasher, and the heavy attack E-frame was the Mad Cat. After the legal action was taken, Tycho reopened negotiations with FASA, and the toy lines were produced and released to coincide with the Battletech TV show, which released in 1994. Playmates and Harmony Gold in 1994 reached an agreement for Playmates to produce and distribute Robotech. As part of the legal agreement, this empowered Playmates to sue FASA over the Robotech IP infringement. Playmates would reissue Robotech as a subline of Exo Squad. Over time, the two lawsuits would be combined into a single courtroom, and the court found in favor of Playmate toys in 1996, but the ruling was that FASA was not required to pay the opposition's legal fees or any damages. And I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give any legal advice, but I do enjoy some legal YouTube like Leonard French and Legal Eagle, and so reading between the lines of that's kind of a like, all right, everybody settle down. This is what you're going to do moving forward, and we're put everything in the past behind us, sort of ruling.
Yeah, like, this was not done for malicious reasons. This was an honest misunderstanding. So everybody settle down, calm down, and we'll move on from here.
Yeah, let's all act in good faith moving forward.
Not that Harmony Gold is capable of that.
We'll get to that.
What is good faith?
Yeah. The court also ruled that the Mad Cat, King Crab, Black Hawk, Dasher, Koshi, Dayashi, and the Bushwhacker were all protected designs under FASA's copyright, and they also ruled and found that Playmate's Exo Squad line of toys did not infringe upon that copyright. They did rule that the Elemental had grounds, though. For Harmony Gold's part of the case, and if you are not strapped in, this is really where it gets so they tried to basically bury FASA in Discovery. And do we know what Discovery is?
Kind of.
Discovery would be the section where you got to bring forward the documents and that the judge is going to look over.
Yes, and both parties are going to look over, and then, you get the documents. And one legal tactic, especially before computers were much better at searching and comparing things, was to just bury your opposition in an excessive amount of legal documents and try to burn them out. And that's what Harmony Gold did by sending FASA 25,000 documents.
During Discovery, don't they get to look at your financial records and everything?
That would be case dependent, but it isn't uncommon.
Yeah, because that would have given them not FASA, but Harmony Gold a chance to look at what FASA had going on the inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Harmony Gold or their lawyers made a mistake somewhere along the line, and 3 documents that were included in the 25,000 were containing sensitive information on them. So Harmony Gold wanted them pulled from the lawsuit and said it fell under client attorney privileges, but the court ruled that since they were included, that they would be taken in as evidence, saying that the error waived the right to privacy. This resulted in the case being settled out of court and the records sealed. To this day, we have no idea if the 3 documents had anything to do with Battletech.
Well, so real quick,
like directly Battletech.
Yeah, when was this particular case?
This was part of the 1996 ruling, okay, when Harmony Gold and Playmates had their court cases combined and settled or resolved.
Okay, the most recent one, I heard the reason it got settled and all the unseen are back is because in a previous case, it had come out that Harmony Gold didn't have the actual license to the designs themselves. So I'm wondering.
We call that foreshadowing for this.
So that's what I'm wondering what was going on here.
Yeah. I mean, it entirely could be possible that those documents contained or would lead to that being found out.
But sir, we don't even have that authority. Settle out of court.
Yeah, all right. So by this point, FASA had already removed all the images that were being distributed that would fall under contention. An additional interesting note is that the chain of custody of the rights was, at the time, was an absolute mess and only recently ultimately was decoded. Harmony Gold's license actually explicitly excludes plastic models. That fact and others leaded the case to stall for the couple years, and also the fact that the scope of the case was insufficient to properly dig into the license issue. FASA also claimed that Harmony Gold's inaction gave them an implicit license. This argument was dismissed, of course referring back to no legal action being taken at the beginning of this. The seed of the storm is really that 20th Century Imports had the rights to license Japanese mecha images to FASA. This fundamental question was never taken up with the courts, nor was it ever resolved, and the images in question subsequently became known as the Unseen. In 2003, Catalyst Games issued a technical readout, Project Phoenix, as a retool for all the old designs that would allow them to be used again, but now with new and different art. These would become known as the Reseen. Big West, Tatsunoko, and Harmony Gold. Alright, so in 1991, Tatsunoko granted Harmony Gold an exclusive license and irrevocable rights to the 3 series mentioned for a 10-year period. These rights were extended to 1998 and then again to 2002, with the final term being set to expire on March 14th, 2021. In 1998, Big West, a co-producer of the Macross series, filed a suit saying that it had sole right to make a sequel. That same year, Tatsunoko revoked the license to Harmony Gold. It would be reinstalled in 2002 with only Mospida and Southern Cross series. In 2003, the Japanese court ruled that Tatsunoko could make a sequel series, but it did not have the rights to the 41 original designs owned by Big West. This caused Harmony Gold to amend their deal with Tatsunoko, and that Harmony Gold would pursue legal action outside of Japan, and that the legal fees would be reduced from their trademark royalties. Which is, yeah, that doesn't seem fishy. In 2017, they wished to have their contract extended in perpetuity. This was denied, so the contract will expire in 2021. Alright, so harebrained schemes in Harmony Gold. In 2016, Harmony Gold again came after the Battletech universe, this time attacking harebrained schemes for their Battletech 2018 title, specifically the use of the Unseen, and cited the 1996 case. But during the proceedings, they incorrectly submitted evidence resulting in more confusion and issues, specifically listing a screenshot as having the Unseen that did not.
Because I remember that one. It was an early trailer, and it was like an Atlas that was battling a Marauder, I think, or a Warhammer. And they basically said, yep, it's got legs and arms. It's a giant walking robot. That's Robotech.
Yeah.
Even though it was an Atlas, which has only ever been in Battletech.
Yeah, and Atlas is a undisputed Battletech design. In addition, some of the individuals working on Battletech 2018 and MechWarrior Online also worked on the mech packs for MechWarrior 4 that included the Marauder, the Warhammer, the Rifleman, the Wasp, and the Archer, among others, and no action was taken then against Microsoft. Can't really see the difference. Action was threatened and possibly started, but with the already standing legal knowledge, the suit never really gained any traction because, of course, what we have learned since subsequent lawsuits that they had dealt with. Ultimately, what we know now is because of all of this, Harmony Gold actually did not have the rights, but likely thought they did, or at least if they were acting in good faith, they thought they did. And over time, and the iterations released by Battletech released them from any form of legal obligation, and so now Battletech is ultimately free from this shadow, which is so great. Although a complete non sequitur side note that was super interesting is the Leopard class dropship is believed to be inspired by the Minerva from Crusader Joe anime series. The image, however, was never taken out of any publications, so I'm not sure if that one just slipped through the cracks or they thought there wasn't enough of a claim.
Flying bricks are pretty much universal. It's hard to...
Yeah, just like giant things with giant robot legs and giant robot arms.
So that is the legal ease of the Unseen issue. And we're done with that. So, any thoughts, comments?
Well, like I said, I remember reading something, and I think it was a kind of a documentation of this whole saga on Sarna, that Harmony Gold's love affair with suing people over mecha got them in trouble when they tried to sue someone they honestly had no right to sue. And it came out in those proceedings that Harmony Gold's license was basically just to distribute.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have the rights to any of the underlying material, just the distribution. And so they were technically never allowed to...
They had no legal standing.
Yeah, they were never supposed to be able to sue people over the use of any of the art. They'd basically been scamming people for decades, claiming that they had the rights to this art, which is super shady.
For having the word harmony in their name, they're not very harmonious.
And their word is definitely not gold.
No.
So all of the notes for this I got mostly from a fan-compiled project called The Unseen, and I highly recommend it if anybody wants to dig into this and learn more. That being said, it's really good, but it is a difficult read. It is not structured to flow in any sort of way. It is very data dump. So go in with that in mind.
Well, I mean, it's a crazy saga. I'm not sure how you make that easy to read.
I tried to make mine flow, my dude. I tried to make mine flow.
Obviously, we just need some sort of Netflix miniseries about this.
Yep.
I can see that happening someday.
Our sources for today are Sarna, Battletech Battlemech Manual, Master Unit List, Primitives Volume 5, 3085 Unabridged, 3085 Project Phoenix, TRO and Record Seats Succession Wars, Operation Klondike, Battle Corp, and The Unseen document. We are supported by our Patreons at patreon.com/on the Origin of Battlemechs. Our social media on Twitter is at Origin of Mechs. We also have a dedicated channel on the Everything Battletech Discord. Feel free to stop by and say hi. If you have any questions, requests for topics, or wish to contact us, our email is ontheoriginofbattlemechs@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, I encourage you to let your friends know about us and to leave a review. Special thanks to my friend Laura for the intro and outro. Class dismissed. Everybody have a great day.
Peace out, mech warriors.
Stay safe out there.
Module complete. System standby. Would you like to load the next module?
Well, hi, Craig.
He's a good bot.
I wish Craig said things other than we're now recording. Like, if he said hello, that'd be nice.
Would, might humanize him a little too much for some people, though.
His name's Craig. If we wanted to not have him humanized, we crossed that bridge far too long ago.
Fair.
Once you name them, you can't kill them and eat them.
That's how it works. Rules of the farm.